Hey guys, it's Megan. In today's video, I'll be showing you how I made some more DIY aesthetic room decor. If you missed the last video, I'll make sure to link it down below. And without further ado, let's just get into it. The first project that I made was this record magazine holder. To make this, you'll need 2 records, which you can find at any thrift store or yard sale. You'll also need a cardboard box that is bigger than your records, parchment paper, an iron, and some strong glue like E6000. And if you want to paint your records, you'll obviously need some paint as well. Start by taking one of your records and taping it to your box. Leave a little part of it hanging off the edge. Put a piece of parchment paper over the record and iron the part that hangs over the edge of the box. You'll want your iron to be on the highest setting for this project. We're trying to melt the record so that it folds down over the edge. When it melts enough to fold down, you can iron the bottom of the record a little bit too. Let the record cool, and then do the same thing with the second one. I lined my second record up with the first one while it was still on the box so that they would be the same height when they're finished. The process is exactly the same for the second record. Tape it to the box, cover it with a piece of parchment paper, and then iron the edge until it folds over. You can also use wax paper for this project, but the wax paper might stick to your record a little bit. If that happens, you should be able to get it off with a magic eraser. You can also tip the box on its side to make ironing the bottom of the record a little bit easier if you want to. When both of the records cool, it's time to stick them together. Cover your work surface with more parchment paper in case you get any glue on it. Put some E6000 glue on top of the bent part of one of the records, and then put the bent part of the second record on top. The good thing about E6000 is that it doesn't dry right away, so you can shift the records around to make sure that they're lined up perfectly. Once you're happy with it, wipe off any excess glue with a paper towel, and put something heavy in the middle like this bottle of paint. Let it dry overnight, and then the basic record magazine holder is done. Of course, I couldn't stop there, so I decided to paint my records. I put a stack of old magazines in the middle so that I would have a more solid surface to paint on. Since I really only had about 2/3 of the record to work with, I went with designs that were kind of dripping down on each side. You could do the same thing on both of the records, but I decided to make them both different. On the first side, I used black paint to make it look like something was dripping down on top of the record. When the black paint dried, I used a sponge brush and some blue, teal, purple, and pink paint to create a galaxy effect. You don't necessarily have to do a layer of black paint first, but it was really helpful to have it as a guide. When that dried, I went over everything with this purple Crayola glitter paint that I got at Target. This is the same process that I used to decorate my sketchbook cover. When that was dry, I outlined the bottom of the drips with a white Posca pen. These work really well on top of acrylic paint, but the pens feathered a little bit when I put them directly on the record. I also added curved highlights to each drip, and then I made a bunch of dots to make it look like stars. Finally, I added a few real stars to finish the galaxy. So here's how the first side turned out. It's definitely the simpler of the 2 sides, but I think that it might be my favorite. The second side had Tinkerbell on it, and since she's a fairy, I decided to go with a floral theme. I've been wanting to try out this Q-tip painting technique by an artist that I found on Pinterest. The artist's name is Angela Anderson, and she does a lot of other painting tutorials, so I'll make sure to link her channel in the description. I obviously modified it a little bit, but I learned some really cool techniques. I cut an old card in half to make the stems. Any old credit card or gift card would work. I dipped half of it in dark green paint and the other half in light green, and I scraped the card in a downward motion for the stems. I also got to do a little bit of splatter painting, and I used a group of 5 Q-tips held together with a rubber band to make leaves. I thought it might be useful to show you guys how to paint each flower, in case you don't feel like sitting through an hour-long video. I forget what the blue flowers are called, but we're just going to call them wisteria. Use a rubber band to group 4 Q-tips together, and then dip half of them in teal and then half of them in light blue paint. Press the Q-tips onto the paper, making a sort of skinny, elongated triangle shape. You could make these any color you want, just use a dark and a light version of each color. The next flower that I painted was basically the other way to paint wisteria. Use a single Q-tip to make dots that are slightly larger than the head of the Q-tip at the top, and then gradually make them smaller towards the bottom. Then use a lighter color to add more dots on top. Last, I used an even lighter purple mixed with a tiny bit of blue to add more dots and finish the flower. To paint a daisy, draw a line with your Q-tip and then draw an X shape on top of that line. This will give you 6 petals. When that dries, dab a dot of paint in the center to finish it off. For the lily of the valley flowers, I painted sort of an upside down W shape with pink paint as the base. When that dried, I put a dot of dark pink paint on the center part of the W. Then I used light pink paint to paint a curved line towards the bottom. This one, it's a little bit harder to explain, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing in the video. The last Q-tip flower that I learned how to paint was a rose. First, paint a large blob shape with bumps around the edges to look like petals. When that dries, use a darker color to paint curved lines to add detail. Then use a slightly lighter color to add even more detail. So that's basically the gist of it. I added a few more blue dots to represent more flowers, but once you know how to do each one, you can paint them in any arrangement that you want. This is a super easy and relaxing technique, and I definitely recommend trying it out. Obviously, you don't need to store magazines in this. You could use it to hold other records, books, or anything else that you can think of. Let me know if you've ever painted records and what you would paint on them for a shout out in my next video. The next idea that I have for you guys is this miniature wall hanging. To make this, you'll need a piece of cardboard that is 6 inches by 8 inches, 4 pieces of cardboard that are 6 inches by 1/2 inch, some yarn, some twine or another type of string that doesn't stretch, tape, and ribbon, which is optional. Start by measuring a line that is 1/2 inch away from the top of your big piece of cardboard. Do this on both of the 6 inch sides. Make a mark 1 inch away from the edge, and then make 12 marks that are 3/8 of an inch apart. Repeat this on the bottom as well. Next, take some scissors and cut a slit at each mark that you made, stopping at the 1/2 inch line. Then hot glue 2 of the smaller cardboard pieces on top of each other, right above the 1/2 inch line that you drew. Repeat this on the other side as well. Now you have a loom to make the weaving on. Cut pieces of your non-stretchy string or twine and put them through the slits, leaving about 2 to 3 inches on the back. Tape the string down on the back and then repeat this for all 12 notches on the loom, leaving extra string on the back and taping each side down. When you're done, the front of your loom should look like this, and the back should look like this. Now you can start the weaving process. For a basic stitch, go under the first string, over the second, and then keep going under and over, alternating strings until you reach the other side. Pull most of the string through, leaving about 3 inches of excess hanging off. For the next row, do the same thing, going under, over, until you get back to where you started. You can repeat this as many times as you want, depending on how big you want that section to be. When you want to switch colors of yarn, just leave 3 inches hanging off at the end of the section, and then start again with a new color. Another thing that you can do is to make tassels. Cut 3 pieces of yarn that are all the same length, and slide them underneath 2 of the base strings. Stop at about the halfway point, and pinch the strings in the middle, bringing them up to make a loop. Put both loose ends down through the loop that you made, and then pull the ends to make a tassel. Since I had 12 base strings, I made a row of 6 tassels. You can trim the ends of the tassel when it's finished to make them more even. You can also use different thicknesses of yarn to mix it up a little bit. I wove this in the same way, leaving a bit of a tail at the end to weave it back in later. The last technique that I used is pretty cool. It ends up looking like a braid when you're done. Go over the first string and then under the first string, making a loop. Do the same thing on the second string, bringing it over and under. Repeat this until you get to the end of the row, wrapping the yarn over and under each base string. When you get to the last base string, go back and do the exact same thing except in the opposite direction. Since we already went under the last string, just go over and under string 11, and then repeat this until you get back to the beginning. Again, leave a 3-inch tail hanging from the end. Once you've finished the weaving, carefully remove the tape from the back of the loom, and then slide the base strings out of their slots. Tie each base string in a double knot with the one beside it. Since I had 12 base strings, I made 6 knots. Do this on both the top and the bottom of the weaving, and cut off any excess string. Now we need to take care of all the loose ends. You could use a yarn needle if you have one, but I couldn't find mine, so I made one out of a pipe cleaner instead. Fold the pipe cleaner in half around the yarn and then twist the ends together, and cut off any excess. Use this just like you would use a needle to weave the loose strings through the back. Then, go outside and find a branch to hang the weaving from. Definitely wash it off with soap and water first, and cut it down to size if necessary. Then, take an extra piece of yarn and thread it through your needle, then attach the weaving to the branch. I threaded the yarn through the top of the weaving and tied a knot, and then I basically used a whip stitch to attach them. Take the yarn over and around the branch, under and through the weaving, and repeat until you reach the end. Tie another knot and you're good to go. To hang it, I took 3 pieces of yarn and I tied them to one end of the branch. I braided the pieces of yarn together and I tied it onto the opposite end of the branch. So here's how the finished wall hanging turned out. It might seem like there's a lot of steps, but it's honestly pretty easy to do, just a little bit time consuming. You can make your loom as large or as small as you want, and it's a great way to use up some of that extra yarn that you might have. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and as always, make sure to subscribe for more videos just like this one, and make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. They are both @WellerMegs. And yeah, I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!